Do you get difficult questions from your IT department or your colleague web developers on the impact of Google Tag Manager on your page load times? Or do you want to optimize your Google Tag Manager container to load faster so your page speed score overall will increase? Then this is the video for you. So in this video I'm going to give you 5 tips how you can improve the impact of Google Tag Manager on load times, plus a 6th bonus tip at the end. Alright, let's go. Welcome to the channel, my name is Leon. This channel exists to help you make better decisions in your daily work using your analytics data. And if you like what I'm doing, please click the like and subscribe buttons down below. That would really help me get this channel off the ground. And also, if you're interested in more videos on how you can set up Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics, there's a link in the video description to a playlist full of videos just like this. Alright, today we're gonna talk about the impact of Google Tag Manager on your page speed score. And I want to start by sharing a little bit of my own story, because I did not start as a web analytics consultant. Actually, I started out my career almost 15 years ago as a UX designer / front-end developer. And this was in the time that Internet Explorer version 6 was still a big thing you had to take into account. So you can imagine how many years that was ago. I remember that we were paying a lot of attention to efficiency and optimizing page load times, because around that time the network speeds were not as good as they are today. So we had to be very careful about everything that we put on there to make sure that the pages were loading quick. I also remember that we put a lot of our customer sites online, and after they went online, a bunch of marketing people would come by and ask us to implement all kinds of tracking scripts, which of course would bring down the load speed where we paid so much attention to, that those tracking scripts would bring back the page load of those sites. And I remember that was very frustrating back then. At this moment, I am exactly at the opposite side of that story, because I'm now putting tracking scripts on other people's sites, and I can imagine that they feel very frustrated about that as well. But especially in the last couple of weeks, I've been thinking a lot about the side effects of what we're doing. And that's why I made this video about page load times, because I believe that putting tracking scripts on websites should not impact page speed scores that much. And I can show you by going into my own site here. So I have my own site, and this morning I ran it through the PageSpeed Insights test. As you can see, my site gets a score of 94, and you will find out that if you run this multiple times that it will fluctuate a little bit. But it is possible to have a good page speed score even if you use Google Tag Manager or Google Analytics or whatever kind of tracking script you want to use. And in this video I'm gonna give you 5 tips that I use to go about and decrease the load times of Google Tag Manager containers. So let's go ahead and start with the first tip, and that is to separate your container from the website, because it might be that you run your test and it ends up in red, maybe a score of 40, maybe a score of 60, but you're not satisfied. You want to start by finding out where the opportunities are. You want to start by finding out what causes the page speed to be so low. Is it the website or is it Google Tag Manager? And if it's Google Tag Manager, what in Google Tag Manager causes this load time to be so low? And I do this by going into Google Tag Manager, and I go into admin, and I export the entire container to a JSON file. And if you've done that, you can go into admin again and then create a new container. You can just call it test.com or something like that. Choose web and then import that container over there. And that will give you a space to test. And I've already done this. I've created this container. I've called it in de werkplaats.nl because this is my testing domain. So the first step will be to just export your container, put it in a test container that you can use elsewhere. And the second step here is to, if you haven't already, just purchase a small hosting package. I've used this site for years. One.com, I'm not affiliate, I'm not a sponsor or anything, but I really like this. It's super affordable and the service is very good. It's super stable. And I have purchased my own testing domain, and I have a small package here, so I can do these kinds of experiments. If you don't want to purchase a hosting package yourself, you can maybe ask around. Maybe a friend of yours or a colleague has some place where you can use. But I have this and I logged in and I put a blank HTML file in a folder and I called it index.html. So, and if I browse to that file, you see it's in the YouTube folder and then speed test and then index.html, you will find a blank file. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my test container, put it on here, and then see what the impact is on load times. And by doing that, you remove your entire site out of the equation and zoom in on your container and see what the impact of your container is on the site. So that would be my first tip, to remove the website out of the equation by making your own test container, putting it on a test page like this, and see what the impact is. Well, let's go ahead and see what the impact is of my test container, because I've made a test container containing almost 60 tags, and this is not uncommon for containers these days that I work with, to have so many tags. In them I have two GA4 configs, one site specific, one global tag. I have still some universal analytics tags in here, meta ads, I've got my cookiebot banner, and I've got a Hotjar tag inserting a feedback widget on the site. And as you can see, I'm using a lot of e-commerce events here, both on the site specific and also on the global tag. So I've a lot of duplicates here, universal analytics, some tags here, meta ads has some tags here. So this is the container that I'm going to try to optimize today. So let's start by going into my blank page that I put on my hosting package here. This page doesn't contain anything, no tracking scripts, just an H1 header. I can go into the source code here. As you can see, it's just very simple. There's literally nothing that can slow this page down. And if I'm going to run this page in the PageSpeed test app, we'll find out that this will score 100 out of 100. So let's wait until the results are in. There you go, the results are in. This page scores 100 out of 100, and that's because this page doesn't have anything to slow it down. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up my testing container. I'm going to open up the container code right here, and I'm going to insert my container in my blank page. So the first snippet should be at the top of the head here, and the second snippet should be at the top of the body here. So there you go, and I saved it. So now if I refresh this page, I see that a lot of things are loading. For example, this cookie banner and this feedback widget over here. Now I can run the exact same page through another PageSpeed test. So let's click Analyze. Now we can find out what the impact is, because we've separated the entire website out of the equation by inserting the container into a blank page. A blank page has a score of 100, and now we can find out what the impact is of just adding our container. And now the score, just by adding the container to this page, is 65. So I went ahead and I opened a blank PageSpeed score, and I'm going to track the results. So results of our container, just a full container, gets a score of 65. I'm very bad at calculating things myself, so I always use a typing machine. And I'm also going to document the report by making a link here, right here. So the impact of just adding our full container is 35 points, which is a lot. So just a quick recap. You can diagnose the impact of your Google Tag Manager container by just removing your container and put it on a blank page, and just run the blank page and the full page through the PageSpeed test, and that way you'll find out what the impact is of just the container. So that's the first tip. The second tip is you can go into Google Tag Manager, and if we're going through my testing container here, you will find that not every tag here is a tracking script. There are a couple of tags here, for instance this cookiebot and this Hotjar banner, that are actually inserting things into the page. And my experience is that these tags actually have the most impact on the load times if you use them in Google Tag Manager. So my second tip would be to remove these, at least temporarily, from your Google Tag Manager container to see what the impact is of those tags on Google Tag Manager. So I'm going to go ahead and start by removing Hotjar. So I'm going to delete it. I'm going to submit, remove Hotjar. So and in my Notion page, I'm going to say Hotjar removed. And let's see what this does to our PageSpeed score. So I've removed Hotjar. I'm going to refresh this page, and what we'll see if I do this a couple of times, that the Hotjar feedback widget is gone now. So I can go ahead, and just click Analyze once more. Yeah, results are in 68. So let's fill this in our table, 68. So it had small impact, so it's a little bit better. So the impact of a container is still 32 points on the PageSpeed test. I'm not satisfied with that, so let's go ahead and also remove our cookie banner, our cookiebot. You do not want to do this on a live site, but we're on a testing domain, on a testing container also, so we can fiddle around and see what's happening if we remove certain things. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove this. Remove cookiebot, put a new row in my table because we want to document what we're doing. Cookiebot removed. I'm refreshing my testing page, and cookiebot is gone now. So I'm gonna rerun this speed test and let's see what the results are. So the results are actually a lot better now. So we're at 88. So the impact of our container has gone down to only 12 points. To give a small recap, my second tip would be to go ahead into your Tag Manager container and localize the non-tracking script. So there are usually a couple of tags in there that actually insert things onto your page. And those are usually the tags that slow down the site the most. And by removing these and testing again, we can show what the impact is of just removing those elements. And as you can see here, just by removing Cookiebot and Hotjar, we've already saved 23 points on our page speed test. So these two tags have the most impact on the page load from the whole container. So what should you do with these tags? Well, I've got a couple of ideas. One idea is just to remove them altogether. Sometimes this is possible. For instance, Hotjar, it might be that you're just using this feedback widget, for instance, for a couple of weeks. But if you don't use it, actively remove that from your site because that will go a long way. Sometimes you're not able to remove it because you really need it. Then ask yourself the question, do I need it on every page or can I insert it on a couple of pages? Because that will slow down a selection of pages and that's of course better than the whole site. But if you want to use them or you need to use them on all pages, for instance the cookie banner, we usually cannot drop that very easily. There are a couple of things that you can do. You can remove it from Tag Manager and move it into the source code. Sometimes that will help by speeding things up. So another thing that you can do in Google Tag Manager is if you have your Hotjar tag, so I just removed it, so I'm going to add it back again. So if you have your Hotjar tag, what you can do is not use all pages trigger on it, because that will load it at the start of your page load. What you can do is you can make a new trigger, call it window loaded, and then choose this window loaded trigger type, hit save. Because if you use it, you are waiting with loading Hotjar until the entire page is loaded. And in the past I've had good results with using this technique. You're kind of postponing the Hotjar tag. So what have we done so far? We've removed the website out of the equation by putting the container on a blank page, so we can see the impact of the Tag Manager as a whole. And the second thing that we did is we went ahead and went over all the non-tracking scripts. So the scripts that are adding things to the site, because those are usually very heavy. And by just removing it, you can see where the big wins are. But sometimes you can look for alternatives, load it in a different way, load it on a couple of pages, or just load it in a specific time frame and then remove it after a couple of weeks when you don't need it anymore. So far, we've diagnosed where the big gaps are. So now we're left with a container that has only tracking scripts in it, because I use Google Analytics 4, I use my old Universal Analytics config, I use meta ads, and I have some JavaScript at the bottom that I load. And still, we have an impact of 12 points. And I want to know if there are ways to decrease the impact of these tracking scripts. The third tip that I want to give you is go ahead into Google Tag Manager and look for tags that you do not use anymore. So right now I'm still firing Universal Analytics tags through my container. I want to go ahead and remove these because I don't use them anymore. Universal Analytics already stopped processing my data anyway, so I can go ahead and remove all my Universal Analytics tags from my container. Yeah, I don't have any left. So I'm going to click submit, remove UA tags. And it might be that you don't have Universal Analytics tags, but every container that I open almost has some old campaign tags that were relevant maybe a year ago, that aren't relevant anymore. And I advise you to go through your container at least 2 times a year, just removing tags that you are not using, because that will clean up your container and increase load times. So let's see what the impact is of removing Universal Analytics here. So I published my changes. I'm going to go ahead and refresh my speed test page, put it through the test. So the results are in. The score right now is 96, which is already pretty good. So I'm going to document it right here. So by removing the Universal Analytics tags, my score is 96, and the impact of the container compared to a blank page is only 4 points. I think that's already pretty good. So the first tip is diagnose the impact of the full container. The second tip that I gave you is remove the non-tracking scripts, things that put elements on the page, see what the impact is of that. And the third tip is remove unused tags. And right now we're already down to an impact of 4 points on the PageSpeed test. The fourth tip that I want to give you is to go into triggers and to variables, and you will notice that there are a lot of triggers here that are not used anymore because we removed a lot of tags, but we didn't remove the associated triggers. Well, one tip that I want to give you is there's a site called gtmtools.com. It's made by Simo Ahava. I really like this site because it gives you the opportunity to make bulk changes in your Google Tag Manager account very quickly. And I went ahead into GTM Tools. I already logged in. I'm going to look for my test container right here. And if you open up a container, you can go into workspace mode. And in workspace mode, you'll find tags, triggers, variables. And I'm going to open up the triggers. And all the triggers here that do not have any tags associated with it, they have this delete button. And I can go ahead and walk through this page and delete all the unused triggers from my container. Now I'm going to do the same with variables. I have one unused variable. I'm going to click Update Workspace. So we do not have workspace changes yet, but if I click Update and then let it run for a while, we will find that this has made 15 changes and we can see what they are here. We removed a lot of triggers. So I'm going to submit this, remove unused triggers and variables. So I'm going to publish it. I'm going to refresh my page. I'm going to rerun my PageSpeed analysis. Yeah, results are in. It's actually the same. So this didn't do a lot for our PageSpeed score, but still it's nice to clean up our container. So the fifth tip that I want to give you to decrease the amount of tags in your container is to actually combine tags together whenever that is possible. So as you can see here, I have a couple of e-commerce events right here. So I have view item list, select item, view item, add to cart, remove from cart, all the way up to purchase. And then I do that again because I have a second configuration. So I have as a total of 16 e-commerce tags. Now I can actually decrease that to just 2 tags by just combining those together. Let's show you what I mean with that. So I'm going to remove all the e-commerce tags here. I'm going to remove all the e-commerce tags here as well. I'm going to leave the one at the top intact. I'm going to delete it. I'm going into this view item list tag, and what I'm going to do is right now I'm firing a view item list event, and all these parameters are the same with every event tag. And then I fire this on the view item list event. Well, what I want to do is I want to remove this trigger. I want to make a new trigger called event e-commerce. And this is the way I'm going to set this up. I'm going to make a custom event and enable the use regex matching. I'm going to use a roof character and a dollar character. And in between I'm going to put some brackets. That means that it's going to start at the beginning and it's going to end at the beginning. And in between I'm going to put all my e-commerce events that I have active on this site. So view item list, view item, select item. I have add to cart. I have remove from cart. I have view cart, begin check out, and I've got purchase. So this trigger doesn't respond to one e-commerce event in particular, but it's going to respond to every e-commerce event that I've implemented on my site. I'm going to save this. So right now this tag doesn't only fire on view item list, but it fires on every e-commerce event, and I'm going to use the event variable in the event name box. And I'm going to rename this to e-commerce because this is the tag that's responsible for every e-commerce event on this site. I'm going to hit save. And now because we have 2 GA4 tags, I'm going to duplicate it so I can use the e-commerce events also in my global GA4 account. So now I combined 16 tags into just 2 tags. And there are probably more opportunities for these kinds of optimizations in this container as well. For instance, the login and sign up events they both have shared parameters. So I probably can combine these and combine these 2 and combine the login sign up here as well. So again, I have some triggers that I removed from all the tags, and I can delete the add to cart, the individual e-commerce triggers here as well, because I've made a new trigger that fires them all. So update workspace, update, refresh. So I combined all GA4 e-commerce event tags into 2. Let's click publish. Let's refresh the page. Let's analyze again. And let's see what this does to our PageSpeed score. Yeah, results are in 94. So as you can see, the results will fluctuate a little bit over time, so we're basically at the same level. Alright, up to this point I've shared with you 5 tips to decrease the load time of your Google Tag Manager container. And the first tip was to just remove the site from the equation by copying the entire container to a test container and put the test container on a test page, just a blank page, just to figure out the impact of just a container on the PageSpeed test score. The second tip that I gave you was to remove all the cookie banners and things that put widgets on the page, to remove those tags from the container to see what the impact of those tags is on the PageSpeed score. And after that, we've removed all unused tags, we removed all unused triggers and variables, and we've combined different tags into one tag. So the final tip that I want to give you as a bonus tip is to offload a lot of tags from your client-side container into a server-side container. And I went ahead and made this server-side container, and in this container there are tags for GA4 global, there's a tag for GA4 and then my site-specific domain, and there's a meta ads tag. And what I can do here is I can remove all duplicates. So I have this global at number 2, so all my number 2 tags can go. So I can offload these from my container, so remove them here, delete, and I can remove all my meta ads tags here. This is not recommended. If you look into the meta ads documentation, they prefer a redundant setup where you have both the client side and the server side tracking in place. That will give the most data. But if you're really looking for optimizations of your PageSpeed score, this might be a good option to only use server side tracking. So let's remove these also. So I'm going to delete these, and I'm going into my GA4 config tag, and I'm going to say I want to send this to my server container, which is https GTM in the werkplaats.nl. There you go. And I'm going to submit this. So I'm going to say offload tags to server-side GTM. I'm going to hit publish. And the second thing that I want to do here is I want to go into my server container, and I'm going into clients, into GTM, and I'm going to enable my GTM container to load from this server. So what I can do in my source code, instead of loading the Google Tag Manager script from googletagmanager.com, I can load this from gtm.indewerkplaats.nl. This is my server domain. So I'm going to submit this. Let's refresh our page. Let's run it through the PageSpeed score again. And now our PageSpeed score is back to 100 because we offloaded a lot of our tags to a server container. We even loaded our Google Tag Manager snippet from our own domain, and now our PageSpeed score is back to 100. So getting a good PageSpeed score while using Google Tag Manager and trackers is possible. Alright, that's it for today. I hope you see that getting a good PageSpeed score is possible even if you use Google Tag Manager and even if you use tracking scripts. I hope this video was helpful, I hope it was clear. If you have any comments, please leave a comment down below. Also, if you like this video, please click like and subscribe to the channel. That really helps me get this channel off the ground. Alright, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.